Have you ever thought about how your life at home can affect how you do in school? An article done by FamilyStudies.org explains how a stronger, more stable home can affect kids positively, but an unstable home can work both ways. This meaning that a child can be affected either positively or negatively. A perfect example of how a working home positively would affect a person would be myself. Good afternoon, my name is Sebastian Sugrimsingh, and for me, I did not grow up in a perfect home. I had many tragedies strike my family all in or around the same time, but instead of letting it get to me, I used it as motivation for myself. I may not know many of you on a personal level. However, from listening to your speeches throughout the semester, I know some of you have faced certain tragedies as well. Today, I'll be telling you 4 separate things. 1. How good homes have a positive effect. 2. Why unstable homes can have a positive or negative effect. And a rebuttal statement against my own claim and why I disagree with it. And finally, what I want you to do after you're finished listening. For some people, it's almost common sense for why good homes make good students. When raised a certain way, you learn certain values and expectations. However, it's not as black and white as it may seem. These good homes and these good values also, yes, they do learn values and expectations, but they see certain things that rub off on the child, like certain motivational things. If they see their parent and family doing well and being successful, they want to be just as, if not even more successful than that person. And from learning this, they learn how important education is, and they need education, and it becomes a want along with the need for education. And the common need that everybody has is food and shelter. And to obtain stable food and shelter, you need a good job. And in order to get a good job in today's world, because jobs are so scarce, you need a degree. And to get a degree, you got to go to school. And by going to school, you become a student. And from the student, you can excel. And when you excel as a student, you get your degree. And from the degree, you can get a stable job and therefore have stable food and shelter. These same needs, food and shelter, apply to everybody, including the people who have unstable homes. This unstable homes can have positive and negative effects, like I said. Usually, it's always one or the other, never both. It's not easy to conflict with both. According to an article in 2016 by AAMFT.org, most children have great strength, resilience, and coping skills. These 3 things allow them to focus more on doing good at school because it makes them use school as a safe place. They use school as a motivation so they can almost escape what they're doing at home and use school so they can make a good living for themselves. And when they're in school, they do other things after school, so they like to stay in school, such as certain extracurricular activities so they can further their education and further better themselves so they can, like I said, escape from the home they're living and make a better life for themselves. Other kids, however, they succumb to what's going on at home and they cannot focus on what's going on around them, and they spiral downward into a depression, or they try to cope with what's going on at home by using drugs or alcohol or something of that nature. And it's very tragic, however, that most of these kids, they do not finish high school or college, and they drop out, and some of them, by using the drugs and depression, can either have even more mental issues, or they can commit suicide, or from using the drugs, they do anything for the drugs, and then they end up in jail, and it's very hurtful. Another negative effect is an article done by Suzanne Durnan called "How Does a Lack of Parenting at Home Affect Children's Grades in School?" This article was written in 2014, and it talks about how parents who show lack in interest in a child's work at home, how can it affect them having bad grades at school? And the reason for this being is, if a child is at home, he or she sees that the parent shows no interest in what they're doing, then they will not care about what they're doing. If their actions have no repercussions, then they will just continue not to care and not to even want to go to school, or go to school and just get by, which then leads them to spiral downward and not really care about school, which is not good. Some people, they just don't believe any of this is true. They completely disagree that the home and school have any correlation with each other. They feel that if a person is in school, they should forget about home and focus on being successful, and every person should want to be successful. However, this is not the case. Sometimes people can't really do both, and according to istss.org, the brain cannot focus properly when under a certain amount of stress. The brain will focus only on one thing and not the other. Even though the person may be sitting in class, they may be listening, they may be writing it down, and they may be focusing on what's going on in class. However, their brain is somewhere else. So in the moment, as they're learning, they may retain the information, but it will never transfer to their long-term memory, and they will not fully retain the information. They'll only retain the stress, what's causing them the stress, and therefore when time for tests to come, they will not understand what's going on because they will draw a blank. From knowing all this information, this leads me to what you can do. Most of us have a family. Most of us are in college because we have a family already, and in order to provide for that family, you need to have a good job, good education, so you can provide a stable home and shelter, food and shelter for your child, or whoever your family may be. And what I want you guys to do is really focus on the importance of family and how much it can impact your life, and how much what goes on at home can really lead to what goes on in school. It has a direct correlation with and of each other. In conclusion, today I have told you about how family at home can affect a student. I spoke to you about how you can focus on family to have a positive, and how it also has a negative effect on a person. What goes on in a home is so important for a child's growth, and a good home can have such a good positive effect on a person. And it's always better to give your child a good example, but there's also a lot of negatives in the world too. So you want to try to show your child a good example of what to be, not a good bad example. And by a good bad example, I mean you want to show your child what to do. And you do not want your child to look at you and say, that's not what I want to do. And they use you as what they do not want to become. And that is the worst thing. You want to show your child a good example because you want them to be as successful and even more successful than you already are. There's a lot of people here in this classroom that have families at home, and it is important for you to realize that everything you do rubs off on you, rubs off on them, and they rub off on you. Children and people around you are like sponges. When you say things, they automatically retain it, and they may focus on what you're doing and try to follow in your certain footsteps. And sometimes your footsteps are not showing them the right path. So you need to realize everything you do, it can affect them, and you want to make sure your examples are good examples. Thank you for listening, and I hope you not only enjoyed this speech, but you learned from it. Thank you.